truly yours, your biggest fan. This is Stan.
3, everyone say, Tim's going to the moon.
Tim's going.
Spoiler, Tim's not going to the moon.
I'm sorry. Did I step on your moment?
Grandpappy said there was a moral there about not worshipping bullshit merchants who will tell you whatever you want to hear. In 2018, Elon Musk announced that they were going to be flying their first private customers around the moon by 2023 in Starship.
Offered to provide those seats to artists and cultural influences and like basically, you know, key influences in society, and we better get that flight right.
And it's cancelled.
We're gonna definitely be doing everything we possibly can to make sure that is a good flight.
To our first customer.
Awkward.
To our first and only customer.
So, funding BFR is definitely a key question, and you know, that's really where you know, we need to seek, you know, every possible means of funding. Private customers or any customers for BFR are incredibly helpful in funding the development of the rocket.
And their only paying customer was paying a significant fraction of the development costs of the rocket.
On the price, which is a significant price, and will actually have a material effect on the on paying for the cost of development of BFR. Like, it's a non-trivial amount that is, it's like of material impact to the BFR program. So it really, actually, it makes a difference. This is, yeah.
Now, there will be people out there who say, look, Musk revolutionized the cost of sending people to space. Just look at Commercial Crew and the Falcon 9. And they will quote this article saying, look, Musk's doing it for almost half the price that the Russians were. Maybe not understanding that the Russians used to charge 20 million a seat to orbit till they found they could price gouge Uncle Sam. And Musk's response was, I can still use my reusable tech to charge almost twice what the Russians used to charge with a disposable Soviet-era rocket. And the Musk fans will be saying, oh yes, this is Thunderfoot. He irrationally hates Musk. He will say any lie to try and discredit Musk. Or something about inflation. Oh, sorry, what's that? It's actually a quote from Musk. Burn!
Or the mercy of Putin, which is a very small thing. I mean, there, hopefully, but he's charged, the Soyuz seat prices started off at $20 million a piece, now they're $80 million. $80 million for a seat on a Soyuz.
I bet they go down after we fly.
Yeah, competition is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And now with the renewal of the Commercial Crew and Russia being a political no-go, SpaceX is now price gouging the US taxpayer almost exactly as hard as the Russians used to. Yeah, when the best defense of SpaceX is they don't price gouge the US taxpayer as hard as the Russians used to, or saying that, well, at least they're better than Boeing, this isn't the win you think it is. Also, while we're back in 2017, that's 7 years ago now? That was the year that Musk announced that they were going to be landing on Mars next year. Which never happened, or that Smart Summer was going to go coast to coast with no controls touched whatsoever, which by 2024 had progressed to the point where it was disabled on cars because it couldn't be trusted to get across a car lot. It was the year that Musk announced he had approval for a DC Baltimore Hyperloop, which you'll be shocked to find out was complete vaporware. Or that there would be solar-powered mega trucks that would call emergency services when the driver was sick. An ultra-performance mega sports car, where the battery would have been bigger than the car itself. And surprisingly, these things have never been delivered on. And he was boasting about how he was going to launch Commercial Crew next year.
And then next year, obviously, launching the first American astronaut crew since the shuttle retired in a U.S. vehicle. Shuttle's last flight was, what was that, like 6 2011? Yeah, 6 years ago. So next year, it'll be 7 years, a 7-year gap since the United States was able to put astronauts into orbit with a US vehicle.
Yeah, and this was basically Musk announcing that it was going to be a year late. It was meant to be launching in 2017. And you'll be shocked to find out it didn't launch in 2018 either, or 2019, but only towards the end of 2020. On the completely new, revolutionary technology of a rocket. You know, almost exactly the same mission that things like Gemini were flying some 50 years ago.
1. Ignition. Engine start. 27 seconds after the hour.
But what's maybe funnier is Musk thinks that launching men into orbit on a rocket will be a iconic moment in spaceflight for some reason. No, everyone's going to stop what they're doing and watch Spacex.
And that's going to be super next level. Like, all of Earth will be tuned in for that launch. Like, basically Earth, more than 1 billion people will watch that launch.
Yeah, Musk thought his rocket launch was going to get twice as many people watching as the moon landings. I'm going to have to push X to doubt pretty hard on that one. Maybe something to do with the fact that Russia and the Americans have been doing this sort of thing for at least the last 50 years on a semi-regular basis. Another private company doing it with a few $1 billion of taxpayer money was unlikely to be a earth-shattering moment in mankind's history. Anyways, in 2022, Tim Dodd announced that he was gullible enough to believe Elon Musk's promise that he was going to be flying around the moon. And if you look for that video now, you'll find that it's private, and all that's left is a smell of anger and shame.
3, everyone say, Tim's going to the moon.
Tim's going to the moon!
Because I'm literally a crew member of the moon.
Way to sell it, Todd. That was almost convincing. Oh my god, they actually believe this is happening. What a bunch of morons. Holy crap, does he actually believe this is gonna happen?
I'm going to the moon. Like, literally, I'm going to go to the moon.
I'll be the biggest fan you'll ever lose. Sincerely yours, Stan. P.S. We should be together too.
And that is absolutely as ridiculous as it sounds, but I'm literally going to fly around the moon. And I genuinely still can't believe it. Like, it still hasn't even sunk in yet.
We have a moron.
I've known for quite a while, but I've been chosen as one of the crew members for the Dear Moon mission.
Meet Dim Todd. He's a rocket expert.
Now, there are plenty of tards out there living really kick-ass lives. My first wife was tarded. She's a pilot now.
Oh, sorry, I seem to have got the clips a little mixed up there.
And I teach rocket science on YouTube. I used to be a professional photographer.
But for a rocket expert, he sure believes in a lot of stupid things about rockets. Like shouting, I'm going to be on that thing, while pointing at an out-of-control rocket that if he were on it, he would be literally a minute away from death. Now, that's dedication.
This is the future that I have been waiting for. Oh, wait, that looks like the renders. We have a lot of engines missing. Look at how many engines are shut down.
Tim's going to the moon!
Because I'm literally still moving. Oh my gosh.
No, wait.
Oh.
Look up, look up. Oh, that looks like it's going down.
You know what? I think that was the flip.
Why?
That was a full cartwheel. I'm gonna be on that thing.
Yeah, some people take their hero worship more seriously than others. You see, in 2017, that's what, 7 years ago now, SpaceX was going to send someone around the moon within a year. Maybe a year and 3 months on Falcon Heavy. Sounds kind of familiar. However, within a year, SpaceX had made the amazing progress from saying it was going to fly someone around the moon within a year to saying it wasn't going to human rate the Falcon Heavy, but was instead going to make a new rocket to fly people around the moon within 5 years. And 5 years came and went, and the rocket evolved from something where literally everything failed on it, including the system designed to blow up the rocket if something went wrong, to blowing up without the system designed to blow up the rocket if something went wrong, even needing to be triggered, to finally spinning out of control on a suborbital trajectory, before entering the atmosphere backwards and burning up. And the rocket evolved from something that was going to take 100 tons to low Earth orbit, to something that couldn't even make it to orbit with literally zero cargo. And finally, very recently, they had their 4th mission, which you might call a partial success in that the booster didn't blow up and successfully made a soft landing in the ocean where it wasn't recovered. And the upper stage melted and did actually also make a soft landing, all while taking 0 tons to orbit. But to call this a success, you would kind of have to ignore the fact that Musk had taken a contract to actually fly people around the moon last year. About 2 years ago, the Dear Moon mission announced that it was going to be sending artists around the moon.
Painter, photographer, musician, film director, fashion designer. The distance to the moon is 240,000 miles.
And even while empty, Starship runs out of fuel at about 200 kilometers. So that's just a little bit short of going around the moon, let alone having enough fuel to actually land when you come back to Earth. Basically, when they announced this Starship flight, the plans were so half-baked that they were just making up the numbers. Now, you might remember that they cancelled the first Dear Moon mission because the Falcon Heavy wasn't going to be human-rated. Spoiler, Starship can't be human-rated, in that if anything goes wrong with it, everyone on board will die. Which, as we'll come to later, would probably be a mercy. And during all of this, I was getting real Mars One vibes as the lemmings queued up.
A human colony on Mars may sound like science fiction, but it might not be that far-fetched.
I will tell you how we will go to Mars, and I will tell you where we are in the timeline of this mission.
Elon Musk. This one had Nobel Prize winners involved with it.
This is really something that can be achieved. I think this might become a most spectacular media event ever.
Mars One, a Dutch non-profit foundation which plans to send humans on a one-way trip to Mars, announced Monday that it has chosen 100 finalists from a field of 200 applicants based on online interviews. Mars One plans to launch in 2024. The first 4 people would start the colony on Mars, and if all goes well, Mars One plans to send groups of 4 every 2 years. The candidates also come from a wide range of backgrounds like science, art, and education.
Photographer, musician, film director, fashion designer.
My name is Tim Dodd. I'm from the United States, and I've been chosen as a crew member for Dear Moon.
Meet Mead McCormick. She's a filmmaker in Los Angeles and one of the top 100 finalists for the Mars One mission.
There's a lot of video things that I want to do that can help share the experience with the general public.
But I'm asking for an opportunity to tell the story of Dear Moon from a first-person perspective. I've always looked up to space. As a young child, I wanted to become an astronaut.
Everybody thought that the idea was crazy, and I sincerely did not think that it was a crazy idea.
My soul is begging for this. It needs this.
And of course, the Mars One crashed and burned spectacularly, achieving nothing. Yeah, taking gazillions of dollars of supporters' money with it. And if you're thinking, well, SpaceX is a reputable space company, they're going to do much better. Really, the space company that thought their rocket was just going to fly around the moon, only to work out while carrying 0 cargo that it runs out of fuel in low Earth orbit. Well, that's just for starters. Then just miraculously popping solar panels out of nowhere.
The crew will spend a week in space.
Yet the great thing about vaporware is you're just really not constrained by the laws of physics.
What will they feel when they see the moon? When they see Earth in full view?
And just to show how half-assed all of this is, that's the view you would get if you were coming over the North Pole of the moon. You know that because you can see the North Pole on the Earth. But that's not the way you would orbit the moon in the Dear Moon mission. You would be on an east-west or west-east type trajectory. So the moonrise would look like this, not like this. You know, it's not just the whole mission plan was half-assed, the computer graphics to go with it were as well. Now it turns out the eccentric billionaire who was financing the Dear Moon mission has given up on it completely. Which begs the question, if SpaceX has been ditched merely for a contract to fly around the moon, how far away are they from actually landing on it, as they were meant to be doing about 3 months ago now? This is the Gantt chart that accompanied SpaceX's proposal for the human landing system, basically the thing that takes people from lunar orbit and lands them on the moon, for which they got some $3 billion of taxpayer money. You know, of all the complicated stuff that you can do in space, flying around the moon is one of the simplest ones. It's Apollo-era stuff, specifically Apollo 8. You literally just go up and come down again. Except you've got to time it for when the moon is there. So timing matters, and you only spend about an hour or so around the moon, half of which you're looking at the unlit portion of the moon. And then you're on your way back. Now, when Apollo was doing this, it was actually a fairly ballsy thing, because the maths had to mostly be done by hand.
We here on the ground have done all we can in the way of computations. It's up to the crew now. They're on their own.
Maybe a reminder of the advanced computer graphics they had access to back then.
That will place his spacecraft exactly in the same orbit with Gemini 7.
And if you screwed it up, you could very quickly get to the point where there was no way that the humans would get back alive. There was some real skin in the game on these things. Now with modern computers and over 50 years experience, not so tense. But Dear Moon is basically Apollo 8. Thing is, Starship at this moment isn't even at Apollo 4. Apollo 4, which successfully tested the heavy launch vehicle, successfully tested the second stage, successfully tested the third stage, successfully tested the command module, successfully refired it, successfully tested the heat shield at orbital re-entry speeds, all on its maiden flight, which was somewhat before Elon Musk was even born. Starship Test 1 failed to make a suborbital trajectory and blew up. Starship 2 failed to make an even shorter suborbital trajectory and blew up twice. Starship Test 3 managed to successfully inject an out-of-control upper stage into a suborbital trajectory before the lower stage blew up and the upper stage re-entered the atmosphere in an uncontrolled fashion and burned up. Starship 4, well, that was the first one with elements of success. I mean, we're not talking like the successes you could have in 1967 or anything, in that the booster didn't blow up before it made a soft landing in the ocean, and the upper stage partially melted before also making a soft landing. And while all the SpaceX fans were dancing a happy jig about this, even the most optimistic appraisal of their progress means they haven't even gotten to the first goal on this Gantt chart, and honestly might be dead in the water in more than a literal sense. You see, Musk already says that Starship can only take possibly some 50 tons to low Earth orbit.
We're aiming for, currently Flight 3 would be around 40 or 50 tons to orbit.
Then given Musk's propensity for overstatement, it's probably nowhere near that. In that the only times we've actually seen it inside, it's completely devoid of cargo. Thus far, Starship has only ever launched an empty tube into space. And basically, if the heat shield you have to add to make this thing survive re-entry outstrips the weight of your cargo to low Earth orbit, congrats, you've made a pointless vehicle. But even with Musk's optimistic appraisal of 50 tons, well, with the originally stated 100-ton cargo to low Earth orbit, the Government Accountability Office reckoned you would need the best part of 20 refueling flights for a lunar mission. So with 50 tons, it would be near 40. And with an even lesser cargo than that, it'll be many more. So fine, Musk says they're going to redesign the rocket to make it bigger.
So the current design, Starship 2 will be over 100 tons, and then Starship 3 will be over 200 tons.
With Starship version 2 and 3, which appear nowhere on this Gantt chart whatsoever. But fine, you redesign it to make it slightly longer. One can't but help think that if they could solve problems like this some 50 years ago with slide rules, why did SpaceX have to blow up or melt some 4 rockets to figure this out? And having not even achieved Apollo 4, and now they've just had their Apollo 8 moment cancelled. Because they are comically far from making this happen. Look, I said way back in one of my SpaceX Busted videos that Starship is basically a larger version of the shuttle with a more sensible stacking arrangement.
And I'm not so sure I fancy the chances of those spindly little flaps for actually surviving re-entry.
Camera view is looking right at one of the forward flaps. And we're strategically putting some cameras around the vehicle.
Which means Musk will shortly have another great idea of maybe some fixed plate type heat shield. And another brilliant new idea that no one's ever thought of. Hey, what if we actually just say, put an undercarriage on this and maybe land it on a runway or something? Then we wouldn't have to worry about reigniting the engines. And we could vent all of the tanks such that if we land, there is no chance of an explosion. And you'll say, hey look, this is just simple and it works. And it's way more profound than people think it is. And the Elon Musk fans will be like...
At which point they will have the same problem as the shuttle, but on steroids. You see, if the heat tiles come off, you lose the vehicle, and the space shuttle, the underlying frame was relatively flexible compared to the delicate, fragile, and inflexible heat tiles, which is why the shuttle got the nickname of the Flying Brickyard. And if you thought the underlying frame of the shuttle was flexible, this thing is a giant floppy tube, which has apparently one span across it to try and stiffen up the tube. Hey, here's an idea. Why not move that stiffening brace to the bottom of the tube and make it into a sort of wing-type structure? So basically, between flights, they will have to re-inspect the heat shield every time, just like they did with the shuttle. And this alone kills the rapid reuse thing. Or you can just skip the inspections and lose a vehicle every time a tile or so falls off, killing the economics of reusability. And that's assuming there is actually any financial benefit to this reusability at all. Incidentally, I'd always assumed that the interior of Starship would be pressurized. Basically use gas pressure to rigidify the vehicle.
Right, I don't know if this will work, so let's pressurize it. Yeah. There you go. So it's now actually hard to push because it's pressurized, and if I take the pressure off, which is done like this, and that's soft to push. Yeah.
Now it all goes on the pressure differential, of course, so, having a vacuum outside and even a partial pressure inside will give you a lot of structural rigidity on a can like this. But that, of course, would mean that you would have to do a good enough job in welding all this together that it would be airtight. And it looks like SpaceX didn't have the faith that they could do this, so they actually had giant holes in the vehicle to let the air out. Incidentally, if it did vent all of the atmosphere out fairly slowly whilst in space, then re-entered the atmosphere, such that it's a vacuum on the inside of the can and atmospheric pressure on the outside, this wouldn't go so well either.
Sweet, so it's now hooked up to the vacuum system, and as you can see, there is 1 atmosphere of pressure in there at the moment. So let's start this up. Oh, wow! I only took 1/10 of an atmosphere out, and look what happened. That's what a reduction of 1/10 of an atmosphere did, even though it took up to 3 bars of pressure. And let's just do this for good measure. Oh, no, that's half an atmosphere of pressure. That's basically all of it.
Anyway, looks like they had big holes in the side of the Starship to vent all of the air out and let the atmosphere back in when it was re-entering. This means that your Starship now basically has no gas pressure inside of it to rigidify it. So it has to be structurally braced, which of course adds weight. And not having a pressurized interior means this really isn't that suitable for humans. Well, maybe if Dim Todd was happy to wear the exact same spacesuit for a week on the Dear Moon mission. You know, with that supersized diaper. Dim, personal log, stardate, day 4.
20 minutes, we'll see the pilgrim.
White thing passed outside the window today. No one cared. I no longer fear hell after 4 days in the same diaper. I see my emotions reflected in the dead eyes of my crewmates.
Don't do that. No, come on. Oh, man!
They say that death is certain due to all the tiles that fell off during launch, but somehow it's just lost its sting.
Rate up, adrenaline up, stomach muscle spasming. Overbeck's in distress. Look at these methane levels.
My heart warms that Musk is already preparing to talk to tell how a burning star full of social media influences is a great success for SpaceX.
And congratulations, guys, you did that. That's insane. I mean, it looks like CGI. I mean, it's hard to believe that that is unfiltered video. That's just the actual what the camera saw. No filters, no nothing. That's actually what the camera saw, which is insane. So, you know, you're doing incredible work that I think almost no one thought would actually happen. So it's wild that this...
Oh, how I love Elon from the bottom of my poop-filled diaper. And I can already see the Musk fans piling up in the comments right now saying, "Ha! Joke's on you! This fantasy is completely unrealistic. Starship will never be human-rated because engine reliability issues and landing reliability issues are... And, oh yeah, no emergency abort system." Incidentally, 2 weeks of pooping in a diaper is not far off what the early Gemini missions did. You know, because they wanted an endurance mission to show that people could actually survive in space long enough to get to the moon and come back. So they had 2 people sitting in a crazy small Gemini capsule, during which time they came to the conclusion that wearing spacesuits for an extended period of time was completely impractical.
Frank, we're moving right along in this suit situation. I would like to get some more specific comments from you at this time.
Roger, there's no question in our minds the only way to fire these things is without pressure suits.
And they could just about take those pressure suits off in the tiny, pressurized Gemini capsule. Something you wouldn't be able to do in an unpressurized cabin. Anyway, so they're going to need to do as many checks on this thing as they did on the shuttle's heat shield. So let's say, before it leaves orbit, let's be super optimistic and say it needs 10 refueling flights at, say, 100 tons apiece. And they're going to launch them at the amazingly fast rate of about 1 per week. That's about 3 times quicker than SpaceX has ever reused a rocket. So that's like 2 months. But whatever, let's say it's super optimistic and it's only 1 month. So Tim's diaper is going to be fully overloaded before they even leave low Earth orbit. But don't worry, Tim, only a week or so more to go and we'll get you right out of that diaper. You see, SpaceX said it would be building a human landing system, that's this bit in the Apollo era tech, for about $3 billion. That's basically what Apollo 11 did. And thus far, they've burnt through 2/3 of the taxpayer cash, and now they've got to the point when they've just had their merely flying around the moon mission cancelled. America's aspirations of relanding people on the moon, which is kind of a dumb goal. You know, human missions typically end up being about 99% about giving the humans enough oxygen to breathe such that they don't die of asphyxiation, or enough water to drink such that they don't die of dehydration, or food to eat such that they don't die of starvation. Well, with food, water and oxygen being in pretty short supply in space. Rovers doing science merely just need power to do their science. But whatever, there is a romance about people in space. And for this romance, Musk is the manipulative X. He promises everything, if only you will give him one last chance.
So we want to get Mars to be a self-sustaining civilization as quickly as possible. And I think this can be done in around 20 years.
Oh, and boy, are there a lot of easily manipulated, emotionally dependent girlfriends. Musk will be almost solely responsible for the castration of America's human spaceflight aspirations. And guaranteed, when that happens, his girlfriends will be out there in force, making excuses about how it was all their fault for not believing in him enough. So why will it end up castrating the American human space program? Because he promised the Earth, and gullible saps believed him. They worshipped him. You know, because Manipulative X was telling them exactly what they wanted to hear.
In order to build a city on Mars, we'll need to be kind of in the million-ton to orbit range. So it's going to end up flying several times a day from many different locations in the world.
What's going on? Feel it in my ears.
And I think there's a pretty good chance that it does Earth-to-Earth transport as well.
I am particularly excited about that capability.
Hello, what's going on?
I can visit my customers overseas in Dubai, in Riyadh, in London, and get home in time to make dinner.
Hello, what's going on? Rocket, that's what I thought. Oh, it's Spacex!
Because the fastest way to get from one place to another on Earth is, to get from here to the other side of Earth is an intercontinental ballistic missile. But just make sure you delete the nuke and add the landing part.
In reality, this is comically delusional bullshit, such that you would have to be a complete and utter moron to believe any of this.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Time to share our latest Starship supercut. We've taken Elon's 2024 presentation, cut down the repetition and unnecessary bits, and served it up right here as a neat bonus video. There was a load of great stuff in this, so if you missed it, watched only some of it, or just want a fun refresh mixed with wonderful music, you are going to love this.
Is the overall sort of path to making life multiplanetary. Starship is the first design of a rocket that is actually capable of making life multiplanetary. Before this has had the potential to extend life to another planet. Because this is the first time in Earth's 4.5 billion year history that it's been possible to extend life or consciousness beyond Earth. The key thing is that we need enough people and enough tonnage on Mars such that Mars can survive and continue consciousness, even if something would happen to Earth.
For too long, humanity has existed within dysfunctional and polluted cities that ignore nature. Now, a revolution in civilization is taking place.
Then on Mars, in the beginning, we would simply reuse the ship materials, so most of the ships wouldn't come back, but then over time, you'd want to bring the ships back so you could reuse them.
Imagine a traditional city and consolidating its footprint.
What if we removed cars? What if we got rid of streets? What if we innovated in the public space?
Designing to protect and enhance nature. The line will be home to 9 million residents.
Mining in general, ice mining, propellant production, long-duration life support.
Energy and water supplies are 100% renewable. The line is designed as a series of unique communities, offering a wealth of amenities. And we are designing it to provide a healthier, more sustainable quality of life. The line's communities are organized in 3 dimensions.
While it sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, the Saudi Arabian government is determined to have this city become a reality by the year 2025.
For a self-sustaining city is about 1 million and several million tons of cargo, which we can do, and we can do this in 20 years. Yes, we're going to Mars. Going even beyond Mars, we'll go to Ceres, we'll go to the moons of Jupiter, and sort of, planet and moon hop all the way out of the solar system.
Look, Neom was a comically stupid idea to build a linear modern city in the desert. And it recently got scaled back from being 100 miles long to being like 1 mile long. That is, the line became the Dodd. The mere cost for building a city in the desert was over $1 trillion. And Musk wants to do the exact same thing, build a city for 1 million people, but not in the desert, but on Mars. And when they go to Mars, this is all going to ramp up by orders of magnitude.
You couldn't have said it better, Kate. And the moon is just the proving ground. It's just the start. When the time comes to make the leap to Mars, everything ramps up by orders of magnitude.
Really? With whose money? All of this was only thus far possible because of government cash. And newsflash, the government is not going to give SpaceX a budget of $1 trillion for basically nothing. If you can't build a city in the desert for that sort of cash, why on earth would you believe a bullshit merchant who says he's going to build that exact same city, but on Mars?
SpaceX founder Elon Musk tweeted out Wednesday that he's hoping to land one of his capsules on the surface of Mars in May of 2018.
That's not that far away.
No.
Big announcement that he's got set for next month, I believe, the Red Dragon spacecraft to go unmanned to Mars also in 2018.
Spoiler, SpaceX has never made anything that has left low Earth orbit, let alone made it to Mars.
And we're going to try to send something to Mars on every Mars rendezvous from here on out. So Dragon 2, which is a propulsive lander, we plan to send to Mars in a couple of years, and then do probably another Dragon mission in 2020. In fact, we want to establish a steady cadence that there's always a flight leaving, like it's a train leaving the station. With every Mars rendezvous, we will be sending at least a Dragon to Mars. So then in 2024, we want to try to fly 4 ships. 2 of which would be crewed, and 2 of which two cargo and two crew.
Meanwhile, in 2024, they were having their mission to merely fly around the moon cancelled.
The goal of these initial missions is to find the best source of water. That's for the first mission, and then the second mission, the goal is to build the propellant plant.
And the person who created an entire rocket company in less than 10 years will get us to Mars by 2027.
In 2017, when Elon first proposed this huge undertaking, his goal was to get the first boots on the ground on Mars by 2022. Since then, Elon has pulled back to a more realistic 2024 deadline to reach the red planet.
Wow, all right, so Musk said that SpaceX's long-term goal is to colonize Mars by the 2020s.
Yeah, this is utterly delusional stuff to the point where it makes the Hyperloop seem like a sane and well thought out idea. For those who don't know, SpaceX had a competition outside SpaceX headquarters where Musk talked in front of a SpaceX Hyperloop tube made by SpaceX engineers.
But it's really not that hard.
It still sounds pretty complicated, Elon.
It's like a tube with an air hockey table. It's really, I swear, it's not that hard.
Meanwhile, the Musk fan club is convinced that the guy who can't even build a 1 kilometer long Hyperloop is going to take humanity to the entire solar system.
And then once we go beyond Mars, there's some asteroids like Ceres, some of the moons of Jupiter. Starship would ultimately be capable of reaching anywhere in the solar system.
Oh no, forget the 1 kilometer one outside SpaceX headquarters. He was going to build one from DC to Baltimore. Sorry, what's that? That never happened either? Huh. If only there was some sort of explanation for all of this.
I'm a con man, or maybe I'm a god, zooming around the planet in my Hyperloop and pond.
But hell, let's just say they can get to the moon, where the space cadets think that it's going to be like this.
Moon's low gravity. These efforts are ensuring that the suit is ready for extensive scientific research during the first mission to the lunar South Pole.
Really, the extensive scientific research of hitting a rock with a hammer. I mean, what exact scientific research do you think they're going to do on the moon that actually requires a human to be there? I mean, the tears of delusionality here. I mean, let's just give Musk that he can get a human to Mars for a few $100,000.
And if we can get the cost of moving to Mars to be roughly equivalent to a median house price in the US, which is around $200,000.
Tough call, seeing as they currently charge about 100 times that amount to merely go to low Earth orbit. But fine, whatever. Bus ticket to go to Mars is going to be a few $100,000. What's the price of transporting someone's home to live there? You know, if the construction price of a house on Earth is a few $100,000, what's it going to be on Mars? And for complete perspective, remember how I said human missions were 99% about just keeping the people alive? Neom didn't have to worry about any of that. The air, the water, and the food were essentially free, and they didn't have to poop in diapers the whole time. And it was still too expensive. And SpaceX say with a straight face that they're going to do that exact same thing on Mars, which will be likely 1,000,000 times more expensive. Look, Musk's rocket can't even make orbit at the moment, let alone take cargo to orbit, let alone do anything with that cargo. He has zero chance of getting anything to Mars, let alone building a city there. Hell, forget Mars. Musk couldn't build a city here on Earth. What on earth makes you think that he could do it on Mars? Nah, Musk's problems are a little more down to earth, you know, like getting sued for insider trading and being investigated by the Securities Exchange Commission over a full self-driving they claimed worked better than a human in 2016. And is currently getting sued in California, where it's alleged that Tesla vehicles could not at the time of those advertisements and cannot now operate as autonomous vehicles. Oh, and sure, the guy who can't make a functioning windscreen wiper.
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth.
On their best product ever, the Cybertruck.
I think it's our best product.
Yeah, sure. That guy is going to be landing people on Mars in the next 6 months. And if you've gotten this far and you're thinking, holy crap, it's exhausting keeping up with this guy's bullshit, believe me, it hurts making videos where everyone from space cadets to NASA believe in obvious bullshit merchant. Look, being a scientist, I'm a pretty big supporter of science, but putting men on the moon or Mars is just a needlessly expensive and dangerous way of doing science. But for those for whom this is an emotional argument, I'll put it in terms you can understand. SpaceX just lost America the moon, and all it cost was the best part of $5 billion of taxpayer money.
Scale that no company has ever achieved in the history of humanity.